An army sergeant returned home after months of duty, his heart racing with anticipation to reunite with the family he cherished most. Not people, but his 3 loyal dogs who had always been his source of strength. But as he pulled into the driveway, his excitement turned into shock. There they were, huddled together on the deck, shivering, weak, and abandoned in the cold rain. Their eyes, once full of joy, now carried a haunting plea for help. What happened inside that house? Why were they left out to suffer? And what Michael discovered when he stepped through his front door left him utterly heartbroken and revealed a betrayal no soldier ever expects to face at home. Sergeant Michael gripped the steering wheel as his truck rumbled down the Tennessee back roads, each mile bringing him closer to the reunion he had dreamed about for 8 months overseas. Rain pelted the windshield as gray clouds hung low over the rolling hills. His heart pounded with anticipation, not for parades or ceremonies, but for the 3 loyal companions who had been his anchor through every deployment. Bear, his Belgian Malinois with the sharp eyes and protective nature. Atlas, the massive mastiff whose gentle soul contradicted his intimidating size. And Titan, his German shepherd who had been with him since puppyhood. Every letter home, every video call with Travis, his trusted neighbor, had assured him the dogs were safe and loved. Travis had volunteered enthusiastically to watch them, insisting it was the least he could do for someone serving overseas. Michael had believed him completely. They had been friends since childhood, hunting together in these same woods, sharing beers on lazy summer evenings. If anyone would care for his dogs like family, it was Travis. The truck's headlights swept across familiar landmarks as dusk settled over the countryside. The old oak tree marking the turn onto his property. The rusted mailbox he kept meaning to replace. The gravel driveway that crunched under his tires, announcing his arrival. But something felt wrong immediately. The porch light was not on. The yard looked unkempt, overgrown in ways that spoke of weeks of neglect. And then he saw them. 3 shapes huddled together on the back deck, barely visible in the fading light. Michael's excitement collapsed into ice-cold dread. He killed the engine and jumped out, boots hitting the gravel hard. The rain had soaked through their fur, matting it against thin frames that should not be thin. Bear lifted his head weakly, recognition flickering in eyes that had lost their fire. Atlas tried to stand, but his legs trembled with the effort. Titan just whined softly, a sound that cut straight through Michael's chest. Chains. They were chained to the deck railing, the metal links rattling as they tried to move toward him. Their ribs showed through their coats, undeniable proof they had not been fed properly in weeks, maybe longer. Michael's throat tightened as he knelt beside them, running his hands through their soaked fur. They pressed against him desperately, tails wagging weakly, licking his hands as if begging him to understand their suffering. Behind him, the house loomed dark and silent. The windows that should have glowed with warmth were black and empty. The door hung slightly ajar, creaking in the wind. Michael's military training kicked in, assessing the situation with clinical precision even as rage began building in his chest. Travis had promised, had sworn on their friendship, had sent reassuring messages just days ago, claiming everything was fine. But here was the truth, written in his dog's weakened bodies and desperate eyes. Betrayal had taken root in the place Michael thought most secure. Michael unclipped the chains with trembling hands, each metallic clink echoing his rising fury. Bear collapsed against his leg, too weak to stand for long. Atlas pressed his massive head into Michael's chest, and Titan just shook, whether from cold or fear or relief, Michael could not tell. He whispered promises he intended to keep. "You are safe now. I have got you. Never again." With the dogs freed, Michael rose and pushed open the back door. The smell hit him first, a suffocating stench of neglect and abandonment. Empty fast food containers littered the kitchen counter. Beer bottles crowded the sink. The living room furniture was overturned, cushions scattered like someone had been living here without caring about the consequences. But it was the mudroom that revealed the full horror. Dog bowls sat crusted with mold, the water dish bone dry with a crack running through the ceramic. Food bags have been torn open and left empty, evidence that at some point supplies ran out and nobody bothered to replace them. On the floor, chewed leashes told their own desperate story. The dogs had fought, clawed, and pulled, trying to free themselves when the cold nights set in and nobody came to bring them inside. Scratch marks scarred the door frame where they had tried to get back into the house, silent testimony to their suffering. Michael's hand shook as he picked up one of the leashes, the leather torn halfway through by desperate teeth. His vision blurred with a mixture of rage and sorrow. His dogs had been prisoners in their own home, abandoned by someone he had trusted completely. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. This was not accidental neglect. This was sustained, deliberate abandonment. Travis had stopped caring weeks ago, if he had ever truly cared at all. The reassuring messages, the promises, the friendship, all lies. Michael pulled out his phone, photographing everything. The empty bowls, the chewed leashes, the scratch marks. The evidence would matter when this went to court. Because it was going to court, Travis would answer for this. But first, Michael needed to get his dogs warm, fed, and to a veterinarian. He returned to the deck where they waited, still huddled together despite being unchained. They trusted him to fix this, to make it right. He scooped up Titan first, the German Shepherd feeling far too light in his arms. Then he helped Bear and Atlas into the truck, their movements slow and pained. As he drove toward the emergency veterinary clinic 20 miles away, his mind raced through what came next. The confrontation with Travis, the legal consequences, the recovery process for dogs who had endured weeks of suffering. But underneath all the planning was one burning truth that Michael could not shake. Betrayal did not always come from enemies on foreign battlefields. Sometimes it wore the face of a friend, someone once trusted, someone who had proven himself utterly unworthy of that trust. And that cut deeper than any wound Michael had carried from war. The headlights cut through the rain as he drove, glancing in the rearview mirror at 3 dogs who had fought to survive when they should have been safe. They had not given up. They had held on, waiting for him to come home. And now that he was here, Michael would make sure justice was served for every day they had suffered alone. The fluorescent lights of the animal emergency hospital cast harsh shadows across the examination room as Dr. Sarah Chun moved methodically from one dog to the next. Her expression grew graver with each assessment. Michael stood against the wall, fists clenched, watching her document their condition with professional precision. Bear first. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, possible kidney damage from prolonged water deprivation. His weight was down nearly 30 pounds from his healthy baseline. The Belgian Malinois, who had once bounded through fields with endless energy, now barely had strength to lift his head. Atlas next. The Mastiff's massive frame made the weight loss even more shocking. Muscle wasting, pressure sores from lying on hard surfaces, infections in his paws from standing in his own waste. Dr. Chin's jaw tightened as she examined the raw patches where the chain had rubbed his neck. Finally Titan. The German Shepherd Michael had raised from a puppy showed signs of the worst psychological trauma. Severe anxiety, stress-induced digestive issues, and what Dr. Chin gently termed learned helplessness. He had given up hope during those weeks of abandonment. How long were they like this? Michael's voice came out rough, barely controlled. Dr. Chin met his eyes with sympathy, but did not soften the truth. Based on the condition of their coats, the stage of malnutrition, and the healing patterns on some of these wounds. At least 3 weeks, possibly 4. They had been surviving on rainwater and whatever insects or small animals they could catch while chained. The enormity of it hit Michael like incoming fire. For weeks. An entire month while Travis sent him messages claiming everything was fine, while he posted photos on social media of himself at bars and parties, while Michael's dog starved and suffered in the cold rain. Dr. Chun continued her assessment, her professional demeanor cracking slightly. I have been a veterinarian for 15 years. This is one of the worst cases of intentional neglect I have documented. These dogs fought to survive when they should have been safe and cared for. Will they recover? Michael asked, though he was not sure he wanted to hear the answer. Physically, yes, with time and proper care. Dr. Chun began preparing 4 lines for hydration. Psychologically, that is harder to predict. They may always carry fear responses from this trauma. Trust issues, anxiety, especially around abandonment situations. Michael watched as she inserted the first 4 into Bear's leg, the dog barely reacting. He had been through too much to even flinch at needles. "I need documentation," Michael said quietly. "Everything you are finding. Every injury, every deficiency. I need it all recorded." Dr. Chin nodded. "I will prepare a complete medical report, and I am required by law to report suspected animal abuse to authorities." She paused, studying Michael's face. "I'm guessing you are planning to file charges." "Already planning it," Michael confirmed. His voice carried the cold determination of someone who had made a decision nothing would change. "The person who did this will answer for every day my dog suffered." The veterinary technicians worked through the night, setting up heated kennels, administering medications, preparing special nutritional formulas for dogs whose systems could not handle regular food yet. Michael refused to leave, sleeping in a chair beside their kennels, waking at every whimper or movement. By dawn, the immediate crisis had stabilized. The dogs were hydrated, warm, and beginning the long road to recovery. But Michael's work was just beginning. Michael left the veterinary hospital as the sun rose over the Tennessee hills, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold that felt wrong for how dark his mood was. The dogs would stay for observation and continued treatment. Dr. Chun had insisted, and Michael agreed despite wanting to take them home immediately. They needed professional care he could not provide yet. But there was something he could do, someone he needed to see. Travis lived 15 minutes down the highway in a trailer park that had seen better decades. Michael's truck rumbled through puddles still left from last night's rain as he navigated the potholed roads. His phone buzzed continuously with messages from other veterans in his unit who had heard he was back, wanted to meet up, and welcome him home. He ignored them all. This came first. Travis's trailer sat at the end of a dirt road, a rusted blue single-wide with a sagging porch and a yard full of automotive parts and empty beer cases. A newer truck sat in the driveway, one Travis definitely could not afford on his unemployment checks. Michael parked and sat for a moment, breathing deep, centering himself the way his combat training had taught him. Control the rage. Channel it. Use it as fuel, but do not let it consume you. He approached the trailer and pounded on the aluminum door, the sound echoing across the quiet morning. Inside, he heard stumbling, cursing, the crash of something being knocked over. The door finally opened, revealing Travis in stained sweatpants and a faded t-shirt, his hair a mess, eyes bloodshot and squinting against the morning light. "Michael." Travis's voice came out hoarse, surprised. "When did you?" His words died as he registered the look on Michael's face. The smile he had started to form froze and then melted into something between guilt and fear. "Where are my dogs?" Michael's voice was dangerously quiet. Travis blinked, his mind clearly struggling through a hangover to formulate a response. "Your dogs. They are at your place, man. I've been taking care of them, just like I promised." Michael let the silence stretch, watching Travis squirm. The man could not hold eye contact, his gaze sliding away, fixing on random points over Michael's shoulder. "Try again," Michael said. "I found them last night, chained to my deck, starving, soaked, nearly dead." Travis's face went pale. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Look, man, I can explain. I've been going through some stuff. Michael's voice rose slightly, the controls starting to crack. "You've been going through some stuff. So you decided my dogs could suffer for it. I trusted you. I asked you specifically if you could handle this responsibility, and you swore you could." Travis stumbled backward, holding up his hands defensively. "I'm going to check on them more, okay? Things just got complicated. Money got tight, and money." Michael stepped forward, his presence filling the doorway. "You spent money on that truck. You spent money on the beer bottles I saw all over my house. You had money for yourself, but not for $50 of dog food." Travis's excuses were crumbling, his voice taking on a whining quality. "It was not like that. I was going to go back and—" "When?" Michael demanded. After they died. After they had suffered so much they gave up hoping anyone would save them. The words hung heavy between them. Travis seemed to shrink, his shoulders sagging under the weight of his own guilt and Michael's righteous fury. Inside the trailer, something fell over with a crash. Michael glanced past Travis and saw the chaos. Empty liquor bottles, drug paraphernalia on the coffee table, evidence of a life spiraling out of control. This was who he had trusted. This was the friend he had believed in. The betrayal tasted like ash. Michael stood in that doorway, staring at a man he no longer recognized. Travis had always been rough around the edges, but this was different. This was complete moral collapse. How could you? Michael's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, which made it somehow more terrifying than shouting. How could you look me in the eye through video calls, send me messages saying everything was fine, and let them suffer like that? Travis tried to rally some defense, some justification. Look, I did not mean for it to get that bad. I was going to fix it before you got back. Life got hard and life got hard. Michael's laugh was bitter and cold. You think life is hard. I was in a combat zone for 8 months. My dogs were the one thing I held on to, the one thought that kept me going through the worst of it, knowing they were safe, knowing someone I trusted was taking care of them. Travis flinched like he had been struck. The full weight of his betrayal was settling on him now, and there was nowhere to hide from it. I messed up, okay? Travis's voice cracked. I know I messed up, but they're alive, right? They made it. So we can just... No. Michael cut him off, his voice sharp as broken glass. We cannot just anything. You do not get to minimize this. You do not get to act like it is a simple mistake you can apologize away. Those dogs trusted you. I trusted you. And you proved you were not worthy of anyone's trust. The words hit Travis visibly, his face crumpling. Neighbors were starting to peek out from their trailers, drawn by the confrontation. Michael did not care who heard. I spent last night at an emergency vet. Michael continued, each word deliberate and heavy. Watching them hook up IVs to dogs who were so dehydrated they had stopped producing tears. Listening to a veterinarian explain how close they came to organ failure. Seeing evidence that they had been trying to chew through their chains to escape the suffering you caused. Travis was crying now, messy and pathetic, but Michael felt no sympathy. Years of friendship meant nothing in the face of this betrayal. They were chained, Michael said, his voice breaking despite his attempts to control it. You chained them outside and forgot about them. They were not even inside where it was warm. They were exposed to the weather, starving, and you could not be bothered to drive 10 minutes to check on them. I was going to Travis sobbed. I swear I was. Michael pulled out his phone, showing Travis the photos he had taken. The moldy bowls, the chewed leashes, the scratch marks on the door. Evidence that you're going to never happened. Evidence that while you were partying and spending money on drugs, my dogs were fighting to survive. Travis stared at the images, his face going gray. I did not know it was that bad. That is the point, Michael said coldly. You did not check. You did not care enough to verify they were okay. You just assumed they would be fine and went about your life while they suffered. Michael stepped back, his decision made and absolute. The authorities are already involved. Dr. Chun filed an animal abuse report as required by law. I am pressing charges for animal cruelty and neglect. You are done, Travis. Our friendship is done. Your excuses are done. Travis's eyes widened in panic. Michael, wait, please. You cannot. I can and I am. Michael turned to leave, then paused. And stay away from my property. If I see you anywhere near my dogs or my house again, friendship will not be the only thing that ends. He walked back to his truck as Travis called after him, pleading, making promises nobody would ever believe again. Michael did not look back. The Bradley County Sheriff's Office sat on Main Street in a building that had served the community for over 50 years. Michael walked through the glass doors with purpose, carrying a folder thick with documentation. The deputy at the front desk looked up, starting her routine greeting, but something in Michael's bearing made her straighten her chair. I need to file charges for animal cruelty, Michael said, setting the folder on the counter. Against Travis Webb of Willow Creek Trailer Park. The deputy's professionalism kicked in immediately. She called for Deputy Marcus Freeman, a veteran officer who handled most animal abuse cases in the county. Freeman emerged from the back, a solid man in his 50s with kind eyes that had seen too much cruelty over the years. Within minutes, Michael was in an interview room, laying out the entire story. Freeman took notes, his expression growing darker with each detail. When Michael spread out the photographs from his house and the veterinary reports Dr. Chun had prepared, Freeman let out a low whistle. "This is extensive documentation," the deputy said, scanning through the medical findings. "Severe malnutrition, dehydration, evidence of prolonged neglect. And you have proof he was responsible for their care." Michael produced the text messages, the written agreement he had made Travis sign before deployment, and character statement from other neighbors who had seen Travis ignore the dogs. Freeman nodded slowly. "This is one of the clearer cases I have seen. Most animal abuse cases struggle with evidence, but you have built an airtight record here." Michael's military training had taught him documentation was everything. "I want him prosecuted to the fullest extent. What he did to my dogs was not accidental. It was sustained, knowing neglect. Tennessee animal cruelty laws are strong," Freeman explained. "Class a misdemeanor for neglect. But with these circumstances, the DA might pursue aggravated cruelty charges. That is a felony. Could mean jail time, fines, and permanent prohibition from owning animals." "Good," Michael said flatly. "He does not deserve to be responsible for any living thing." Over the next hour, Michael gave his complete statement. Freeman photographed all the evidence, made copies of the veterinary reports, and contacted Dr. Chun directly for her professional assessment. By the time they finished, the case file was substantial and damning. "I will forward this to the district attorney today," Freeman promised. "Given the evidence and the severity, I would expect charges to be filed within 48 hours. We will issue a warrant for Webb's arrest." Michael felt a grim satisfaction settle in his chest. This was not about revenge. It was about accountability, about making sure Travis faced consequences for the suffering he had caused, and about ensuring he could never do this to another animal. As Michael left the sheriff's office, his phone rang. Dr. Chin's name appeared on the screen. He answered immediately. "How are they doing?" "Better," she reported, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "They ate this morning. Small portions, but they kept it down." Bear even wagged his tail when one of the texts came in. The news hit Michael harder than he expected. Relief flooded through him, loosening the knot of tension he had carried since finding them. "That is good. That is really good. There is something else," Dr. Chin continued. "Atlas let me pet him without flinching. That is a significant trust milestone given what he has been through. The psychological recovery is beginning." Michael closed his eyes, leaning against his truck. "They're going to be okay. With time and patience, yes." Dr. Chin paused. "What about the legal side? Charges being filed within 2 days." Michael opened his eyes, staring at the sheriff's office behind him. "Travis Webb is going to answer for every day they suffered." 2 days later, Michael was at the veterinary hospital helping the techs with Atlas's physical therapy when Deputy Freeman called. "We picked up Webb this morning," Freeman reported. "He's being processed now. Bail hearing is scheduled for tomorrow, but given the severity and his financial situation, he will likely stay in county lockup until trial." Michael set down the resistance band he had been using with Atlas. The big mastiff looked up at him with eyes that were starting to regain their light. "How'd he take it?" "Like most people who suddenly face consequences for their actions," Freeman said dryly. "Lots of crying, claiming he did not mean it, promising he would make it right. But the evidence does not lie, and the DA is taking this seriously." "What happens next?" "Arraignment in about a week, then trial date will be set. Given how solid the case is, his public defender will probably push for a plea deal. But that is up to the DA." Michael thanked Freeman and ended the call. Around him, the veterinary hospital hummed with activity. Techs moving between kennels, the soft whir of medical equipment, the occasional bark or meow for patients. His dogs had become favorites among the staff, their recovery story spreading through the practice. Dr. Chin found him in the therapy room an hour later. She had been monitoring news of the arrest, knowing Michael would want updates. "The local paper is covering it," she said, showing him her phone. The headline read, "Local man arrested for severe animal cruelty. Veteran's dogs nearly starved to death." The article detailed the charges, included quotes from Deputy Freeman about the severity of the case, and featured one of Michael's photos showing the dog's condition when he found them. The community response was building fast. By that evening, Michael's phone was flooded with messages from people he barely knew, offering support, expressing outrage at Travis's actions, and asking what they could do to help. A local feed store offered free dog food for a year. A veterinary supply company donated orthopedic beds for the dog's recovery. A professional dog trainer volunteered services to help with their psychological rehabilitation. The outpouring was overwhelming and humbling. Michael had served his country quietly, never seeking recognition. But now, in his moment of need, his community was rallying around him and his dogs in ways he never expected. Sarah Martinez, a reporter from the county newspaper, called requesting an interview. Michael initially declined, uncomfortable with attention, but Dr. Chun encouraged him. "People need to understand what neglect looks like," she said. "Your story, your dog's survival, it can educate and maybe prevent this from happening to other animals." Reluctantly, Michael agreed. The interview ran 2 days later, a full-page spread with professional photos of Bear, Atlas, and Titan in their recovery kennels. Michael had spoken carefully, focusing not on revenge against Travis, but on the responsibility that comes with caring for animals. When you take on the care of a living being, Michael was quoted saying, "You're making a promise to provide food, water, shelter, medical care, and love." Breaking that promise is not a mistake. It is a betrayal of a creature who cannot speak for itself, who relies entirely on your honor. The article went viral in the region, shared thousands of times across social media. Animal welfare groups picked it up, using it as a teaching example. Legislators referenced it in discussions about strengthening animal cruelty laws. And Travis Webb, sitting in his cell in county lockup, was reading about how his actions had made him the most hated man in Bradley County. His public defender visited with news he did not want to hear. Given the evidence, the community outrage, and the DA's determination, his chances of avoiding conviction were essentially zero. 3 weeks after Travis's arrest, his public defender approached the district attorney with a plea bargain. Travis would plead guilty to aggravated animal cruelty in exchange for a specific sentencing recommendation. The DA, a stern woman named Patricia Blackwood, brought the offer to Michael before making any decisions. "You are the victim here," she explained in her office, surrounded by law books and case files. "Your input matters in this." Michael sat across from her, considering. What is he offering? Guilty plea to all charges. He is asking for 2 years suspended sentence, 5 years probation, mandatory counseling, community service, restitution for all veterinary costs, and permanent prohibition from owning animals. Blackwood watched him carefully. "If we go to trial, I am confident we will get a conviction, but trials are unpredictable. This guarantees consequences and ensures he can never legally own an animal again." Michael thought about his dogs, currently thriving in their continued recovery. Bear had gained back 15 pounds. Alice was playing again. Titan's anxiety was improving daily with behavioral therapy. "What about jail time?" "That is where your input matters," Blackwood said. "I can push for actual incarceration as part of the plea, or accept the suspended sentence with strict probation terms. If he violates probation even once, he goes directly to jail." Michael considered his options. He wanted Travis punished, but he also understood that some punishments were more effective than others. "I want him to feel it," Michael said slowly. "Not just legally, but personally. I want restitution that hurts, community service that teaches him what responsibility means, and counseling that forces him to confront what he did." Blackwood nodded, making notes. "We can structure it that way. Full restitution, which with specialty veterinary care, medications, and ongoing treatment, will exceed $15,000. 500 hours of community service at animal shelters, where he will clean kennels and care for abandoned animals under supervision, and mandatory psychological evaluation and treatment. One more thing, Michael added. I want him to face my dogs. Blackwood's eyebrow raised. Explain. Part of his sentence, I want a requirement that he complete a victim awareness program. That he has to sit in a room while Dr. Chun explains in clinical detail exactly what his neglect did to them. The physical damage, the psychological trauma, all of it. Blackwood smiled slightly. I can work that in as part of his probation requirements. The plea hearing occurred on a cold November morning in Bradley County Circuit Court. The courtroom was packed, filled with animal welfare advocates, veterans groups, and community members who had followed the case. Travis shuffled in wearing an orange jumpsuit. His appearance dramatically changed from the man Michael had confronted. He had lost weight, his eyes were hollow, and he moved like someone who had accepted his complete downfall. Judge Marion Crawford presided, a no-nonsense jurist known for harsh sentences in animal cruelty cases. She reviewed the plea agreement in silence, her face expressionless. Before I accept this plea, she said finally, I want to hear from Mr. Thompson. Michael stood, his statement prepared but his emotions raw. Your Honor, what Travis Webb did was not a momentary lapse of judgment. It was sustained, knowing cruelty that lasted weeks. My dogs suffered because someone I trusted proved himself utterly unworthy of that trust. He paused, gathering himself. But they survived. They are recovering because they are stronger than he could have imagined. And I believe consequences should focus not on my revenge, but on ensuring this never happens again. I support this plea agreement with the stipulations Mrs. Blackwood has outlined. Judge Crawford nodded slowly, then turned her steely gaze on Travis. Mr. Webb, you will spend the next 5 years proving you deserve to remain free. And if you fail even once, I will personally ensure you serve every day of the 2 years I am suspending today. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Travis whispered. The gavel fell. Justice, imperfect but real, had been served. 6 weeks after Michael's homecoming, the dogs finally came home permanently. Dr. Chun had cleared them medically, declaring their physical recovery nothing short of remarkable. Now the real work of emotional healing could begin. Michael had transformed his house into a recovery haven. Orthopedic beds, donated by the community, filled the living room. Slow feed bowls designed to help dogs with previous food insecurity sat in the kitchen. Cameras monitored their activity so Michael could check on them remotely. He had even installed a doggy door so they would never feel trapped inside again. The first night home, all 3 dogs refused to sleep anywhere but pressed against Michael's bed. He woke every few hours to find them staring at him, as if verifying he was still there, that this was not temporary. Bear adapted quickest. Within days, he was patrolling the property again, his protective instincts resurging. But he would not let Michael out of his sight for more than a few minutes, following him from room to room with quiet determination. Atlas struggled more. The big mastiff startled at sudden noises and would shake when the temperature dropped, even inside the heated house. Dr. Chun had warned that physical memories of trauma ran deep. Michael worked patiently, using calming techniques and creating positive associations. Titan's recovery was the most heartbreaking to watch. The German Shepherd had developed separation anxiety, so severe that Michael could not even shower without Titan panicking. A professional behavioral therapist named Rachel Kim began weekly sessions. These boys went through something no animal should experience, Rachel explained during her first visit, watching Titan pace anxiously while Michael stepped outside briefly. They learned that their world could become unreliable, that safety was not guaranteed. Unlearning that takes time. She introduced structured routines, predictability in every aspect of their day. Same feeding times, same walk routes, same bedtime rituals. Slowly, incrementally, the dogs began to trust that consistency again. The community's support never wavered. Veterans from Michael's unit organized a fundraiser that covered all ongoing behavioral therapy costs. Local businesses donated supplies. School children sent drawings and cards, decorating the veterinary clinic's wall with colorful messages of hope. One afternoon, an elderly woman named Dorothy appeared at Michael's door. She introduced herself as a neighbor from down the road, someone who had seen Travis's neglect but had not known who to call. Her guilt was evident in every word. "I should have done something," she said, tears in her eyes. "I saw those dogs outside in the rain, and I thought maybe it was just temporary. I did not know." Michael invited her in. The dogs, surprisingly, warmed to her immediately, especially Atlas, who seemed to sense her genuine remorse. "You did not know because Travis hid it well," Michael said gently. "He lied to everyone, including me. But you are here now, and that matters." Dorothy became a regular visitor, bringing homemade treats the dogs could safely eat and sitting with them while Michael ran errands. Her presence became part of their healing, teaching them that not all humans would betray their trust. 3 months after homecoming, Dr. Chun conducted a full evaluation. The transformation was remarkable. Bear had regained all his weight and more, his coat glossy and thick. Atlas had stopped startling at every sound, his confidence rebuilt through patience and love. Even Titan, though still dealing with anxiety, had made tremendous progress. "They are not the same dogs who left your care 8 months ago," Dr. Chun told Michael. "But in many ways, they are stronger. They survived something terrible and came out the other side. That resilience is something to celebrate." Michael watched his dogs playing in the yard, roughhousing like puppies despite their ordeal. They had been broken but not destroyed, traumatized but not defeated. And every day, they taught him lessons about forgiveness, resilience, and the power of unconditional love. As part of his probation requirements, Travis Webb was mandated to complete victim awareness counseling. The sessions took place at Dr. Chin's veterinary practice, where he would confront the consequences of his actions under professional supervision. Michael chose not to attend the first session, leaving it to Dr. Chun to lay out the medical reality. But the clinic staff, who had become protective of Bear, Atlas, and Titan during their recovery, made sure Michael received a full report. Dr. Chun did not soften anything. She walked Travis through each dog's condition on arrival, using clinical terminology that somehow made the horror more real. Severe dehydration indicating at least 72 hours without adequate water access, she explained, showing him charts and medical photos. Muscle wasting consistent with 3 to 4 weeks of inadequate caloric intake. Evidence of pressure sores from lying on hard surfaces. Stress-induced gastric ulceration. Travis sat through it with his head down, shoulders shaking. But Dr. Chun was not finished. She showed him the behavioral assessments, explaining how trauma had rewired the dog's basic trust responses. "You did not just hurt their bodies," she said, her voice cold and clinical. "You damaged their ability to feel safe in the world." Titan still cannot be alone without experiencing panic attacks. Atlas flinches when it rains. Bear will not let Michael out of his sight. Those are permanent scars from your neglect. The second session included Rachel Kim, the behavioral therapist. She explained in detail the ongoing work required to help the dogs recover psychologically. Hundreds of hours of training, medications for anxiety, specialized therapy techniques, all necessary because you broke something fundamental in their sense of security, Rachel told Travis bluntly. They learned they could not trust the humans responsible for them. That is a lesson that takes years to unlearn. Travis's community service assignments were deliberately chosen to be educational rather than merely punitive. He spent 500 hours at Bradley County Animal Services, cleaning kennels, feeding abandoned animals, and assisting with medical care under strict supervision. The shelter director, a stern woman named Gloria Henderson, made sure Travis understood every animal story. "This beagle was found chained in a yard, just like you left Michael's dogs," she would say, handing him cleaning supplies. "This cat was starved by an owner who claimed they forgot to feed it." Every animal in here represents someone's failure to honor their responsibility. The work was hard, dirty, and demeaning. Travis cleaned kennels that had been fouled, bathed dogs covered in mange, and assisted with euthanizations of animals too damaged by abuse to ever recover. Each day drove home the reality of what he had done. Other shelter volunteers, many of whom recognized Travis from news coverage, made no effort to hide their contempt. He ate lunch alone, worked in silence, and went home each day covered in filth and shame. The psychological counseling proved even more difficult. His therapist, Dr. Ramon Garcia, specialized in accountability therapy for offenders. He pushed Travis to confront not just his actions, but the character failures that enabled them. "You made a choice every single day," Dr. Garcia would say. "Every morning you woke up and chose not to drive 10 minutes to check on animals who depended on you. That was not forgetfulness. That was moral failure." Travis's excuses crumbled under that steady pressure. His addiction issues, his financial problems, his depression. Dr. Garcia acknowledged them all, but refused to let them become justifications. "Millions of people struggle with these issues," the therapist said. "They do not torture animals as a result. Your problems explain context. They do not excuse cruelty." 6 months into his probation, Travis was required to write a letter to Michael. Not an apology seeking forgiveness, but a full accountability statement detailing every failure, every choice, every moment he could have acted differently but did not. Michael read it once, alone, and then filed it away. He did not need Travis's guilt or remorse. The dogs were healing. Justice had been served. That was enough. Michael's story rippled outward through Bradley County and beyond, creating changes nobody had anticipated. Local animal welfare organizations saw a dramatic spike in volunteer applications and donations. People who had never considered animal advocacy suddenly found themselves passionate about protecting creatures who could not speak for themselves. The Bradley County Commission, prompted by the case's publicity, passed strengthened animal cruelty ordinances. The new laws increased penalties, created mandatory minimum jail time for severe neglect, and established an animal abuse registry similar to sex offender registries. Anyone convicted of animal cruelty would be publicly listed and prohibited from adopting or purchasing animals. Travis Webb's name was the first entry. Eleanor Price, who ran the county's largest animal shelter, testified at the commission hearing. Michael Thompson's dog survived because he came home in time, she said, her voice carrying through the packed chamber. But how many animals suffer in silence with nobody to rescue them? These laws send a message that Bradley County will not tolerate cruelty. Schools incorporated the case into their curricula, using age-appropriate discussions about responsibility, empathy, and accountability. Teachers assigned projects on animal welfare, and students raised thousands of dollars for local shelters. One elementary class adopted the veterinary clinic where Bear, Atlas, and Titan had recovered, sending monthly donations and cards. The veterinary community took notice as well. Dr. Chun was invited to speak at the Tennessee Veterinary Medical Association conference about recognizing and reporting animal abuse. Her presentation, which featured the dog's recovery as a case study, became one of the most attended sessions. Other veterinarians approached her afterward with their own stories, many admitting they had hesitated to report suspected abuse because they were not sure how to proceed. "Your documentation and advocacy created a roadmap," one veterinarian told her. "You showed us how to be effective advocates for our patients." The national media eventually picked up the story. A feature in a military family magazine highlighted Michael's experience, using it to discuss the challenges service members face when deploying. Who watches your dependents, not just children but pets, when you serve? The article prompted the Department of Defense to create resources connecting deploying service members with verified, reliable animal care providers. Military bases began establishing foster networks specifically for deployed personnel. Local businesses in Bradley County displayed signs reading animal abuse will not be tolerated in their windows. The community had collectively decided that what happened to Michael's dogs represented a moral line they refused to see crossed again. Michael found himself uncomfortable with the attention, but understood its value. When a high school invited him to speak to students about responsibility and trust, he accepted despite his reservations. He brought Bear with him, the Belgian Malinois, now fully recovered and certified as a therapy dog. He spoke simply to the auditorium of teenagers, letting Bear's presence do much of the teaching. This dog trusted someone who betrayed him, Michael said, his hand resting on Bear's head. He suffered because that person failed to honor a basic responsibility. But he survived, and he learned to trust again. That is resilience. That is strength. A student raised her hand. How did you forgive the person who did this? Michael was quiet for a moment. I have not forgiven him, he answered honestly. Forgiveness is not something I owe someone who hurt creatures I love. But I have let go of the anger because holding on to it only hurts me. Justice was served. My dogs are healing. That is what matters. The students gave him a standing ovation, many in tears. Bear wagged his tail, absorbing the positive energy. After the presentation, several students approached Michael privately, sharing stories of animals in their own neighborhoods they worried about. Michael provided them with information on how to report concerns to animal control, empowering them to be advocates. The impact continued in ways large and small, expected and surprising, changing how an entire community thought about the voiceless creatures who depended on human compassion and honor. 1 year after Michael's homecoming, he stood in the same spot where he had found his dogs, but the scene could not have been more different. The deck had been rebuilt, expanded into a large outdoor space with comfortable furniture and shade structures. The yard was immaculately maintained, with a secure fence and separate areas for play and training. And running through it all, healthy and joyful, were Bear, Atlas, and Titan. The transformation was complete. Bear, now working as a certified therapy dog, visited the VA hospital weekly, bringing comfort to veterans struggling with their own trauma. His calm presence and obvious recovery inspired others to believe in healing. Atlas had become something of a local celebrity, his massive size and gentle nature making him perfect for educational visits to schools. Children learned about responsible pet ownership while petting the dog who had survived terrible neglect and come back stronger. Titan still had his challenges. Storms triggered anxiety, and he could not be boarded or left with others without significant stress. But Michael had adapted, taking Titan everywhere possible and structuring his life around his dog's needs. The German Shepherd had earned Michael's loyalty through years of companionship. Now Michael was honoring that bond. Dr. Chun visited regularly, documenting the dog's continued progress for the case study she was writing. Their recovery has been remarkable, she told Michael during one visit. Not just physically, which was expected with proper care, but psychologically. They have regained trust, confidence, and joy. That is a testament to your dedication. Michael deflected the praise. They did the hard work. I just provided the environment. On the anniversary of his homecoming, Michael organized a community event at his property. He called it the Second Chance Celebration, inviting everyone who had supported the dog's recovery. The turnout was overwhelming. Veterans from his unit, volunteers from the animal shelter, students from the schools he had spoken at, neighbors like Dorothy who had become family, and dozens of others who had been touched by the story. Food trucks donated meals. Local musicians performed. And at the center of it all, 3 dogs who had nearly died played with children, greeted strangers, and demonstrated that resilience was real. Deputy Freeman pulled Michael aside during the celebration. I have been in law enforcement 30 years, the deputy said. I have seen a lot of animal cruelty cases. Most of them do not end like this. Most animals do not recover this completely, and most communities do not mobilize this way. What you have built here, it is more than justice for 3 dogs. It is a blueprint for how we should respond to cruelty. Michael watched Bear demonstrate commands for a group of kids, each successful trick earning cheers and treats. This is not about revenge or punishment anymore, Michael said. It is about showing that trauma does not have to be permanent. That broken trust can be rebuilt. That the right response to cruelty is overwhelming love. As sunset painted the Tennessee sky in shades of amber and gold, Michael sat on his deck, surrounded by the dogs who had survived against terrible odds. They pressed against him, content and safe, living proof that betrayal did not have to be the end of the story. Travis Webb remained in their past, serving his probation and living with consequences that would follow him permanently. Michael rarely thought about him anymore. The focus had shifted from what had been done to them to what they had built despite it. Dorothy approached with a cake she had baked, decorated with 3 dog faces and frosting. She had become like family. Her early guilt transformed into active advocacy. To second chances, she said, raising a glass of lemonade and toast. The crowd echoed the sentiment. Michael raised his own glass, looking at his dogs. Not just second chances, he corrected gently. To the people who give them and the animals who deserve them. Bear barked agreement. Atlas's tail thumped. Titan pressed closer to Michael's leg. They had been betrayed, starved, abandoned, and broken. But they had survived. And in surviving, they had taught an entire community about resilience, responsibility, and the transformative power of unconditional love. The story that began with trauma ended with healing. The dogs who had shivered on a cold deck now slept safely in a home filled with warmth. And the veteran who had come home to heartbreak had found his purpose in their recovery. Some wounds never fully heal, but they can become scars that tell stories of survival. 3 dogs with such scars were living proof that even the darkest betrayal could not extinguish hope. The celebration continued into the evening, laughter and joy filling the air where suffering had once reigned. And through it all, Michael Thompson sat with his dogs, finally at peace, knowing that they had all made it home.